players that want to be great before they've been good. It's like they want to jump past that step of, I want all these great things, or I want to be big time at this, or I want to be great, but you're not even good yet. You gotta go from, maybe an average player to be a good player. It's a progression. You don't just skip those steps.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by the head men's basketball coach of John Brown University, Jason Beschta. Over the past 8 seasons, Coach Beschta has led the Golden Eagles to 138 wins. They've qualified for 2 NAIA national championships, back-to-back SAC tournament title game appearances, and consecutive 20-win seasons in 18-19 and 19-20. In 2013 and 14, as the head coach at Oklahoma Wesleyan, he led them to a 25-10 record and was named the MCAC Coach of the Year. Before earning his graduate degree from Baylor in sports pedagogy in 2004, Coach Beschta pieced together a stellar playing career during his undergraduate time at Bryant. As a Lion, he finished second in program history in both career points at 2,138 and career threes made at 432. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
Well, man, first of all, just thank you so much for giving up your time to do this, to come on and talk hoops with me. And you're just somebody so special to me because of the time we spent at Baylor together. But I've also been so much fun watching your career kind of grow and all the amazing things you've done. So thank you so much, man.
Man, it's just a pleasure to be on here. Love talking hoops. And if I can't be with you in person, just to get a chance to see you, Matt. And, it's great just to have a chance to catch up here.
I feel like you're in DFW all the time, but then you just conveniently have reasons why we can't get together. So wow. I don't know what.
Wow. I haven't been down there in the last couple of years much. Just recruiting's changed so much in the last couple of years, and what we've needed to do and our approach to it, just with everything that's been going on. So I haven't been out down there as much. So at least the last couple of years, I've got a little bit of an excuse. But
how many
next
years
time,
at John Brown now?
Just wrapping up year number 8.
Wow.
The Ocho, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are some of the avenues, or what's been the shift for recruiting for you? What are you using now in order to find players or to see players?
Well, I think it's not just about the avenues. I think it's just been a different situation over the last couple of years. I mean, with the COVID year thing, which has affected a whole lot of everything from kids coming out of high school and beyond, it's made it somewhat harder. In some ways, it's made it easier as a coach. As we're trying to get kids, it allows us to kind of pick and choose from a bigger pool of kids and get some better players, I feel like. But coming into, a couple of years ago, as we all of a sudden we had a bunch of guys back. And then when we got the COVID year back as well, all of a sudden we had more guys that are wanting to stay. And so it just changed even what we needed. We didn't need as many kids as we normally would have needed in some of these classes. And then you come to a year like this year where we had 7 guys in the program that were finishing up with us. 1 was here for 6 years, 3 for 5 years, and 3 for 4 years.
Wow.
I mean, that's unheard of.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And so now it's getting a little more back to a normal, like we have a big class coming in this year. We've got 6 kids coming in this class, and a mixture of 4-year kids and a couple of transfers in the mix. But again, I feel like we're able to get stronger classes of kids overall, just because there's just, everyone talks about the portal and wants to lament about that. I'm not spending all my time worrying about, stuff in the portal. But man, I think we're sure having a chance to take advantage of the fact that some of these kids are getting missed and getting kind of passed by with the hopes of the guys who can help me now.
Interesting.
Out of the portal.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, and I know it's obviously you probably want the best player, the best fit. And it doesn't really matter if that's from the portal or if it's a high school player. But to me, there is this advantage of, okay, not only can we, from a portal player, we can most likely get really good film of him playing at a level close to ours. Cause that's the
Yeah.
hard thing with high school kids is like, I can send them a film, but hard for sometimes for coaches to get a realistic look at what this guy could do. Will it translate? I mean, these portal players, like they're kind of proven a little bit in a way. So what's how are you dealing with that versus a high school kid?
Uh, again, I think that certainly other schools deal with it a lot more than us. I just don't think we're at John Brown, we're a place that's going to hang our hat on just transfers. Um, I just don't know, and I don't have a problem with transfers in any way either. I just think here at our school, it's probably hard to just fill a team with that. It doesn't fit the culture
Mm.
of JBU and our campus. And doesn't mean they're bad kids in any way either. It's just it's harder to integrate within campus, and I think then you start becoming more of those guys, those basketball guys, and not really a part of the campus. And I think that's been a special thing in the last handful of years that I've been here. That's helped things within our program is just our guys integrate so well around the school and the community, and they've just got all kinds of friends outside of athletics, and that brings more people wanting to come support you at games. It just makes you more recognizable and liked around campus, and I think that becomes a little harder here to do if we're doing it out of the portal. But like you said, it is nice. It's, you used to look at, like, say, junior college players, and you could say, all right, this guy averaged this kind of points and rebounds. You can look at that, and they, coincide somewhat to our level. Now you're looking at these guys, and I was talking to a coach recently who's trying to recruit a kid back to his school out of the portal because the guy averaged like 15 and 7. He's like, where else am I going to find 15 and 7 in the portal? You're going to find a guy that averaged a lot less and hope that they're going to average that for you versus, go recruit
Wow.
15
Yeah.
and 7 back out of the portal. It's just nuts. I'm glad I'm not caught up too much in all of that world where we're at right now. But it's changing, the game changes, and you got to find a way to change with it and adapt with the changing times.
Yeah. I'm at a small private school, and another private school coach, a buddy of mine at Prestonwood, made a comment to me how you kind of feel like you have to recruit your own players now, and not in a way of just letting them know why you want them there even more than before. Like it used to feel, once you got them in the door, for the most part, if everything just went kind of normally, they would stay and they'd have a good experience, and you guys would build this relationship. And I think public schools feel that too, that players will leave and go. I mean, there's something I saw the other day, like top five, like 5 of the best recruits coming out of Texas have gone to prep schools for their last year, even though they already had all the big dogs looking at them. Like what?
Yeah.
So do you find that too? Like even at the college level, you have to recruit your kids, your own players, to stay even a little bit more?
I think somewhat, but I think that's a good reminder and a good place for us to be at, because I don't know about you, but I have a tendency to forget about some of that stuff, get so focused or so driven on the things that we want to do, the things we want to improve at, the places we want to go, that I can forget about the guys that we have at times,
The
as bad as that
relationships.
sounds. And that's one of my weaknesses that I have to work through as a coach. And I think it's a great reminder of, hey, we got to constantly build in. And it's not just about recruiting. It's about, as you said, relationship with them. And can we show them that we love them, that we care, and we're after their best, even if they don't always agree with what that is. And I think that's a really important reminder for us as coaches. So I don't think that part of it's a bad thing. And yet at the same time, I don't want to, some kids are going to still see smaller college basketball as a stepping stone. Now you start hear about it like, oh, we'll treat it as a junior college and try to just do it and advance from there. And, I don't want to worry about that. I just want to coach the guys that we have and do what we can with them. If someone has a big dream that they want to get somewhere else after having success, you hate to see that. That's not fun at any level. But I want to support the kids to do the best thing for them. Um, I think the problem becomes more when it's the guys who aren't willing maybe to put in the time, and no, a lot of people aren't willing to wait their turn. What I mean? Aren't willing to say, hey, maybe it's not going to be my first year. And it's hard. I mean, how many players can come into college as a freshman at any level and be really good outside of your elite level
I mean,
players?
you did it, but I didn't do it.
No, and I did not do that in any way. That's such a lie. But it's since it's such a crapshoot in recruiting,
Yeah.
you don't know who's going to end up being good right away, who's going to need to develop. And coach said to me the other day, and it sounds simple to look at it this way, but it's, hey, the grass is greenest where you water it. And so many, and coaches can fall into this too, right? We just get this idea the grass is greener elsewhere, and players see that, and players, in the days of social media and everything, some players I think just want to have it out there on social media. I'm going in the portal. We're NAI, and people are putting things out about, I'm thankful for this and that, but I'm going in the portal. There isn't even a portal for NAI players, and we're still like, but I'm in the portal. And
I'm in my own portal, man.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
listen, guys, come look at me in my portal. Like,
yeah. And I mean, there's just not the same avenues, at our level
yeah,
to do that. But I think it's just a good thing to remember. The grass is greener where you water it. And
yeah.
and if you can, it's kind of like the old make the big time where you are, right? I mean, it's can we be all in wherever we're at? And it's okay to make changes. It's okay that something might be a better fit, or you're following a dream somewhere else. I'm okay with that. But I think it's when you're always chasing something better without, we talk about this sometimes with our guys, is we players that want to be great before they've been good. It's like they want to jump past that step of, I want all these great things, or I want to be big time at this, or I want to be great, but you're not even good yet. You got to go from, maybe an average player to be a good player. It's a progression. You don't just skip those steps. And I think that's the special players get that, and are willing to work from kind of step to step as a progression going along that.
Man, I love what you said about that it being a great reminder. I don't look at the recruiting like when they say you got to recruit your own players. I understand the negative thought behind that. Like, why would I have to do that? Like, they're here, they should be grateful. But I look at, like you said, it's a great reminder of just because they are on our campus doesn't mean the relationship building should stop. I think every player wants to feel like they're valued. They bring something. They are wanted where they are, and that's where I've struggled a little bit when I've lost, even at Faith, lost a player, gone to another school, maybe even a rival school of ours, and I take it personally. Like, I thought I let this kid know his value, and not just in basketball but as a human being, and created this relationship. But then here's the other reminder, and I think you talked about it too, which is at the end of the day we have to do everything that we can do, but then trust God that he'll put the right people on our team, in the gym, on the bus.
Yeah.
And then let go of a little bit of control there, because if not, if you're recruiting all the time your own players and then stressing and worrying about everything that they tweet or say, and all this stuff, you'll go crazy doing that.
Yeah, and I think about that, Matt, too. It's like, two things come to mind. One is, so much of this is like parenting, right? I mean, you've got kids, you understand this. It's we do all these things and we make mistakes. I don't know any parents that don't just blow it. I blow it on a daily basis. I could be making a list of all the ways I fail. And I do that as a coach too, and plenty of things that I fail. But we're doing all these things with the best for our kids in mind, whether it be as a parent or as a coach. And so while we're going to fail, we're still doing it with them and their best in mind. And so often it's not recognized.
Mm,
So often it's going to be, it all comes down to playing time, and
yeah.
that's their experience is based on that. And then you couple that with who's in their ear, who is kind of feeding the dog in them of what are they getting? Is it from their parents? Are they telling them things that, hey, you should be playing over this person, and the parents are going to raise trouble, or hey, we should leave and go somewhere else? Is it an AAU coach? Is it a trainer? Is it a friend? Whatever it else. And there's all these pressures, but there's all these voices competing for our attention. And I think those are just a lot of tough things to navigate all at once. Um, and hope that these guys are listening to the right voices, and having the right people influencing their decision making, their thought processes.
But and then trusting too, though, even if they do, let's just say they come to your place and they're only there for a year. Uh, Hopefully, you've been faithful in spending your time the best you can with them, planting so many seeds with them that, like you just said, you might not see the results of that or reap that, but it'll or sell whatever, it'll happen at some point. And I think that's a great reminder for all of us that when kids make bad decisions, just like adults do, and with all those pressures, that hopefully we have at least peace in the fact that we did our very, very best with them when we had them.
Yeah. And one of the neat things about that within coaching, because it can be so disheartening sometimes when you pour yourself into these kids and the focus becomes, or the notice becomes, on your failures in those instances. And we're trying to do things, but then you don't see the fruit. And it's really hard if you don't ever see the fruit. And then all of a sudden, 8 years later, you get a text from somebody, and, things like that, where it's like, man, I got it now. And I appreciate it. And it's funny how it works. And I think sometimes this is a God thing, I could get an email in the morning from someone that's just going to rip me apart about whatever. And then later in the day, get a call from a parent that's just praising, and it's great to get both sides of that, because it's a reminder of, what, not just an opportunity, but a responsibility we have as coaches. And I think being able to recognize and accept and admit and be open about the fact that, hey, I'm going to fail, I'm going to mess up. I started off our meeting at the beginning of the year when we started school this year for the first time ever, just saying, guys, I'm going to screw up this year. I'm just gonna, and I just want to ask for some grace. I want to apologize in advance for it. I want this to be an environment that we can do that kind of thing in without fear. And we have to hide these things and try to build up this, Instagram, social media presence, like, of that's who I am, of this is the best of me. Let's just be us. Let's be real. Let's understand that we're trying to do the right things, and we're all going to mess up. Let's have a lot of grace, and let's keep trying to grow together.
I mean, how old were you when you were a grad assistant at Baylor?
I stayed on at Bryan College, where I played in Tennessee, for 1 year after I finished playing, and so I went into grad school the year after at Baylor. So I would have been, I think, 23 at the time.
And that was my junior year that you came, and then you were there for those 2 years, right?
Yeah, that was your junior year.
Yeah.
Man, it was crazy just how all that even works, I go there trying to get in with the basketball program, and someone who knew the coach said there wasn't a spot, but I get a TA spot. So I moved there. I load up my car. I didn't even have a place to stay. And I moved there in August, and I slept for my first 2 nights at a truck stop outside of town, at a rest stop, with the window cracked about this much. So I'm scared some big trucker's going to come in and take me. And it's 100-degree heat in Texas. And I'm coming in drenched the next morning to go to the slick and find a shower. I just started showing up in the mornings at workouts and some of those things, because you guys were doing them in the slick at that point. And slowly started to get to know people, slowly started to get asked to help, and eventually was able to get involved.
That's awesome. I ever since I've known you, though, you've been an amazing example of somebody that has great habits and works out hard, the way you train, the person that you are. And so I'm always interested, especially now as a college coach and a successful coach, the daily habits that you have. What do you do that sets you up for success?
Well, I think, the way I look at it, almost more than just the word habits in the last year, is I've been really focusing on the word rhythms. And kind of a mentor of mine has just talked about coming up with, what are your daily rhythms, especially of life. And for me, there's been some different things that have been really helpful with that. One is just making sure that typically, a lot of times it's first thing in the morning. Sometimes it's a little bit after some coffee and maybe getting the kids going, is just spending some time alone and in the Word. I use a couple of apps that have been phenomenal for that over the last year. One is called Lectio 365. Unbelievable.
What's that? Yeah,
Unbelievable.
tell me about that.
So you do this one. They have a morning and an evening version of this, and they're roughly 10 minutes long, and it just kind of takes you through the art of, I think, Lectio Divina, or however you say that, Latin word for it, kind of the idea of taking a smaller passage of scripture and kind of like chewing on it and kind of really thinking it through and finding how to apply that towards your life. And what can God reveal to you through thinking that stuff through and praying it through, and kind of guides you through some of that. That's been a really good one for me, is Lectio 365. The other one is called Pray As You Go. And that one, even the guy the mentor that gave it to me was just like, it's a little odd because at first, the first 3 or 4 minutes, they have some music, and it could be some normal Christian type music or a hymn, or it could be some monks chanting in German. And it seems, and some bells just going gong, gong. And
You're like,
a
what
little,
the world is happening?
It seems
right
a little
now?
weird, but I think it just, part of the rhythms that I need are some things that slow me down and allow me to push other things aside. And these are really helpful for me because it's just something that helps guide me so that my mind doesn't wander so much, and has been really a helpful thing, either one of these. I love the Lectio 365 before you go to sleep. My wife and I honestly put that on a lot of times before we go to sleep and just listen to it. And even if I fall asleep to it, I mean, man, what a great thing to fall asleep to, is learning to reflect back on your day and be thankful for the day. And I think those are good rhythms of life to have. Some other things that I've tried to do is just part of my daily rhythms. And I put, these things change. They don't always stay the same. For part of the year, I'll have set in my phone a reminder, at maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the day, whether it's a short prayer or a Bible verse or something that I just want to pop up as a reminder on my phone, just that maybe I'm walking around campus or whatever. And it's something else can I recalibrate myself for my day? Because I don't know about you, but I mean, I can be so flighty and on to the next thing. And sometimes I just need to be brought back. And that's been a good way for me to do that. Something else that I've done, you may be able to see back on at the top of my bookshelf here and on the side are all these little magnets.
Yeah.
And they've got names on it of our players. And so what I do with these things, I'll show you. I'll move over.
I love it. Let's go interactive.
Interactive. So I got all these names of our guys, and I made a little magnet. And so what I'll do is I'll take those and, say for the start of the day, I'll put all of them on the top of my filing cabinet. And throughout the day, I'll just try to remember and think of our guys, whether it's to encourage them or to pray for them, especially. I'm going to grab 2 or 3 of them. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to move them to the side. And trying to do that can I get through the guys in a day? And it might be, man, I'm going to go walk across campus for something. I'm going to grab 3 or 4 of them and put them in my pocket so that, I get them done over the next hours I'm walking around or whatever, and put them back. And just another rhythm, and not something I do all the time, but a great thing for me to help get my, kind of my perspective, my focus in the right place. And then, on top of that, it's, little things. And again, I fail at a lot of these things, but little things. Am I going to get my exercise in every day? That's an important rhythm for
you don't fail at that. You're super consistent. I mean, look at you. You just look like you're in great shape.
Well, I always heard from way back, it's a whole lot easier to continue exercising than to start exercising. And so I'm just the type that, I bet since high school, so probably, 25 plus years, I doubt I've taken off more than a week ever. It's just part of a rhythm of who I am and what I try to do. Now I've also got to take, hey, that's a good thing. It's a really good thing. And it's really easy to let good things become ultimate things, which is kind of how Tim Keller describes an idol. And so I have to be really careful with taking things like that are good. And sometimes I have to not exercise on a day. and it grinds me, it tears me up, but maybe it's because I need to spend time with my wife or my kids or whatever it is. And I got to make that more important. Now I might still go do some push-ups and sit-ups or something before bed. So I did something. Sometimes it's about, are you doing something? I think that's the important thing is just, man, if I can't do everything I want to do, can I do something? Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a great way to go through a lot of things in life. Can you do something? Are you the type that if I'm not doing everything, I'm not doing anything? So I think those things, I think there's, rhythms to spending time, and improving in your craft with what you do with your job. I think this year more than ever, trying to learn to review and think about writing things down. We can go into that later if you want as well, and kind of a review process for practices, for games.
Definitely.
Those kinds of things. And then and gosh, my wife would tell you this makes a huge difference when I do this, and it makes a huge difference the other way when I fail, is just, man, am I good at planning a date with my wife each week? And another mentor friend of mine who's probably 60 now has told me he's done that with his wife for like 40 years, every week. And so some of it's, I got that. Another thing, it's in my phone. It's a reminder the day before I want to do it each week, trying to get it planned. And it just things that, we have to put legs to the things that we say are our priorities, because it's the things we actually do that reveal whether we actually value them the way we say we do or not. And I hate that. I cringe at that because I know that sometimes I don't get a date in, and like, oh, that says that I don't value that. And what a horrible thing. I don't want my wife thinking that. And it's not that, it's just that I'm flighty and I can be really ignorant and forgetful and all those things. So I need these, we say habits, but these systems in place, really that I can fall back on that are there, that'll help me stay on task of what I'm trying to do.
Man, so much good stuff. And thank you for sharing, the apps and some of the rhythms that you go through. I love the magnet thing. I think I'll steal that. And your word rhythms. I think that's such a good way to look at it, because like rhythm is huge in basketball. Rhythm is huge individually in basketball with how they actually play. Players that have great rhythm, I've always been a little bit jealous of that because I always felt mechanical. There's rhythms within your team, within a game, with the flow and how things happen.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing about rhythm is you can adjust and you can change. And I think that's the beauty of looking at your day like that. Is habits, to me, are sometimes things that I feel guilt if I'm not sticking to them, not doing it the same way every time, not doing things like successful people do. But from that rhythm point is it can flow. And today I'm getting it done here. Tomorrow I'll hopefully I like that idea. And I think that can help someone like me.
And I think, Matt, along with that, being able to, the idea of being able to flow and being able to change, I used to, how I was, at least a lot more when it came to being so, ritualistic about how I'm going to do something, so dedicated, like I'm not changing. I'm in the gym at this time. I'm in the weight room at this time. I'm eating this, all these different things that I could hold to. And I think that's a special thing. And I think that's a pretty rare thing that I thought was a strength for me. But I also think being able to have some flexibility and flow with the rhythms of things is now a sign not of weakness, not a sign of caring less, but it's a sign of maturity. And I think, it makes me, kind of along the same lines. It almost makes me cringe. You see on, I don't want to get, what I value off social media by any means, but you see things on social media about these coaches, about I'm this grinder. I just want people to know I work so hard, or I'm all about the dubs and whatever else. And it's like, man, for me, it's the maturity is that I don't have to do as much. I mean, the sign of being an expert is something they say is being able to simplify things.
Yeah.
Being able to know what to take away. And so I think like that doesn't make you or I less competitive, less driven by any means. It makes us more mature, I think, than we used to be. And I'm not trying to say more mature than those other people, just at least I'm
no,
not
you
trying
are.
to use that.
You are. You're saying it and you're
mature.
no.
I'm just more mature than I was.
But to your point, you were super disciplined as a young person. I mean, the story alone of how you got to Baylor and how you got that, and then the way that you climbed to a place where now that you love being, you've been there for 8 years. You've done that. Exactly what you're talking about. You did grind and you did the hard things, and you allowed that to really dominate your life in a good way, to get to a certain point now where, and I just had a talk with Mano Watsa. He's the president of PGC, and he's just one of the most incredible human beings I've ever talked to, been around. And he is known for his daily routine. It's like an hour and a half long, sometimes 2 hours long. It's incredible the things that he does. But he actually let me know that his performance coach is now encouraging him to take things away from that, to do less, to be a little bit more excellent in the few things he's doing, but open himself up to be able to. Yeah, you're right on the money. When you look at the pictures of the guys that are your age or older or are still grinding, my thought is, why?
Yeah.
Like, enjoy this journey, enjoy the people that you're around, and find some balance. But man, that's hard.
Yeah, and I think one of the blessings, if I could say it that way, of kind of dealing with the COVID stuff over the last couple of years is it made us all take a big step back and really reevaluate everything. It's kind of like, there's an exercise you can do where when you're trying to work on time management, and it's like, all right, write down everything you do in a day, every little thing on a piece of paper. Now take another blank piece of paper and start adding back the things that you want as part of your day. And you start seeing all the things that were wasted within that. And I think COVID allowed us to take a step back and look at all the things that we've done and we do regularly in coaching, and now say, as we could start opening up and do things again, what's worth adding back? Were some of these things that are a low rate of return on our investment? Are some of these things just things we do and I can't even explain why? It's just what coaches do. I mean, there's so many of those kind of things out there. And I think that's allowed me to look back at things and be able to simplify a little bit of what I do and how I invest my time. And now it's not simply a matter of even asking, it's asking the right questions now too. It's not, should I do this or not? It's, should I do this or should I do this? And I think that's a completely different way of framing a question, because just should I do it or not? It's just kind of an easy, lazy question to ask. But when you frame it against alternatives, of what you could do, it, I think it helps you understand, what's the best use of my, the one resource that's the most limited, my time.
Should I watch film or not? That's not a big question.
Yeah.
Should I watch film, another hour of film, or dedicate a little bit more time to my wife?
Yeah,
that's a good question. And so I think you're right on the money with, we need to start asking ourselves better questions with what we do with our day, because so many things are good, but what things are necessary? What things will actually help us grow and lead to having a more fulfilling life? Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. I love getting to ask coaches, what's one thing or a few things that you've borrowed lately that you're excited about?
I think a lot of it's just come down to approaches to how I would coach, approaches to how I would approach a practice, approach a game, and then specifically even reviews of those kind of things have been huge. So I've done some work over this last year with a group called Movement Sports out of the UK. Alan Keane and Simon Turn. If you look them up, you'll find them on podcasts all over the place. really well-respected guys. It was a phenomenal opportunity. Still doing some work with them, finishing out the year. Some evaluation things in a lot of ways that I think as coaches, we all want to improve, right? I mean, there's no question. We all want to improve. And yet, who was it that you look way back, who was it that said, something along the lines of those who wish to improve need to be willing to be thought of as foolish and stupid or whatever it is, something that goes along that. And how many of us are willing to do that? And so I think this year I was willing, and it was hard. Ate a whole lot, not just a slice of humble pie, but lots of it. I was gorging on it this year, and just trying to look at the way I do things on a different level, and allowing Alan and Simon to look in and kind of be a part of this and speak into things of what was good and how can I be better. And I think that's a really hard thing. But for example, a lot of coaches film practice and might go back and watch practices. But how many guys, do something like this? I got a lavalier mic, one of those wireless mics, hooked it up to our camera, and I mic'd myself up for practices. So now instead of just watching a practice and watching it and maybe hearing from far away a little bit of something, or if I yell as a coach, you might hear something. Now I'm hearing how I teach. Yeah. I'm hearing all my talking, all my interactions, my encouragements, my times maybe I got on players. And so now I can look back on that and say, man, I got on this person in a way that wasn't for their best. That was just an emotional reaction on my part, or this was really good and I can use this. Or, I remember that one of the first times, and I had Alan would review these a few times for me, and we did some things to warm up, and then we come in the middle in a circle and I start talking, and he's ripped. He goes, I timed it. You talked for 7 minutes and 27 seconds.
But it was all such good stuff.
After you got them warmed up. What was the point of that? I'm like, but you need people to call you out on that. You need to be willing to like that's how you experience growth is doing some of these kinds of things, and or understanding, was I clear in the way I taught? Or did I talk too much? Some of those kinds of things I think are part of it. I think another thing that was really big within that this year that I took from a guy named Mark Bennett, who he's a guy over in the UK as well, and he does work in schools and with programs and all kinds of different things with sports at all kinds of levels. Former British Special Forces guy from years ago. He's unbelievable. And he talks about this rule of 3. And I really like this. It resonated well with me. And it's the idea of, when we're coaching, can players first, in the rule of 3, first is kind of that personal accountability. So if it's for me as a player, can I recognize, can I assess myself? Can I correct myself? That's the first level. Second level is peers, your teammates. All right. And so can your teammates then step in when recognize I'm doing something wrong? Can you, Matt, as a teammate, speak into that to tell me, what's needed to be said? Third level is where it gets to the coach. And I think in great teams and great programs and great businesses or whatever, you can follow that rule of 3, and you can see that in effect where the coach is that final level. Now there's times obviously teaching needs to come from the coach and some of that, but I mean, you think of great cultures and great programs, great teams, it's examples of where, the best are able to assess themselves, or you got someone coming alongside you quick. I mean, think about the speed of that, of you as a teammate correcting me in the flow of things versus I got to wait until a dead ball or a timeout or a break or something to get it from the coach. And so the speed of being able to make corrections and improve, and I think is just so much faster when you can follow kind of that rule of 3.
How would you teach that to your team? How would you introduce that?
This was the first year for us trying to do some of that stuff. So played with it in a lot of different ways. I think it's trying to set up, Alan and Simon would call it kind of interventions. Can we set up things within practices where those situations are going to happen, and we're encouraging that? Can we set up situations where, there are times where I'm going to call a timeout, I'm going to say 30-second timeout, but you're together as a team. I might stand on the outside of one, my assistant sit with another group, but we're trying to get them to talk. And I want to listen to them. And if I need to try to steer them in a direction, but not overtake the conversation, it's trying to point them in the right directions, or maybe ask a good question to prompt something that I saw. Or there might be a time where, hey, we're working on something on our defense, and we've agreed upon a couple things as our standards of where we're focusing, which that's another area that I think we've gotten better at, is not trying to focus huge, but can we focus on that one or two things for today? And I think when we do that, we find we get better at one or two things versus we don't know if we get better at all in reality. And so it could be within that, we're going through a segment of something, and all of a sudden I could just start counting down. I could just go 10, 9, and that's a signal. We've identified that when that happens, get with your team, figure out what's that thing we're not doing, and can you correct it quickly.
I like that.
And we've done that one at times, and I think that can be really helpful. Mark Bennett talks about a lot of these things if you go back and see some of his videos and his podcasts, and it's just phenomenal. I think the way that even little kids can be taught to do some of these things and take ownership in what they're doing. I thought one of the neatest things, and we'd try this isn't something we did every time, but imagine taking, like, say we're going to do a defensive segment. We're going to say that, all right, what can be our agreed upon standards that we're going to focus on? What's 2 things or 3 things? And whether I help guide them to those things that I want us to focus on, or they come up with it because they recognize, hey, we're going into this game tomorrow or in a couple days. We know that this team does these things really well. What things do we need to focus on? The guys talk about it, and it's like, all right, hey, we've got to make sure we always have high hands on a closeout. We are always feeling a gravity to the ball. So we're jumping to the ball. We're always moving to the ball. And so, hey, all right, those are the 2 things. That's it. So how long, and this is great, Mark talks about this stuff, and this is so neat if you do it for the first time, especially. It's all right, how long do you guys think we can do that and be perfect? Not that we are going to get stops every time or anything, but can we just be perfect of high hands every closeout and always jump to the ball and have that gravity be pulling us to the ball? And guys are going to be like, oh, I bet we can do it 10 minutes. I bet we can do it 5 minutes. They're going to come up with something that's going to be way above. And so you start doing it, the clock's going, and all of a sudden, like 15 seconds in, horn goes, start it over. All right, they started over. They go 20 seconds, someone doesn't, and you keep doing this. You do it a few times, they're getting frustrated. So, all right, pull back in. You pull them back in.
That healthy peer pressure comes in too that you need. Yeah.
And so now you pull them back in, and it's all right. So how long can we realistically do this? And now it's a minute, it's a minute and a half, whatever it is. And it doesn't mean we change the standards of what we're looking for, but now it just teaches them what it takes to be focused, at such a high level on something. And it breeds such an accountability. I thought that was a really neat one to pull out.
Real quick on that. It made me think that the responsibility then on me or our coaching staff to make sure that whatever area of the game we're talking about, we have teaching points that are sticky, that are clear, because how can I ask my players to evaluate themselves on an area of play or a focus that we have, let alone evaluate their teammates or give them reminders. And then when I bring them in and we talk in a group, I'm throwing out even more language that's different. Yeah. So there has to be the systems in place where, like those 2 things that you said, there needs to be something that they can evaluate themselves, another teammate, and then it's being echoed and reinforced by coaching staffs, everybody else. I think that's huge.
And now this becomes the really difficult part as a coach. And I think this is one of those things that I got from Mark and from Alan, and honestly, like even things like if you listen to Doug Lamoff or you read things about him, who's just great on teaching and cognitive loads and all those kind of terms he uses in working memory and all those things. And it's like, the hard thing is if we've got those couple things we're going to focus on. And this year I tried, even within a practice, hey, these are our 2 or 3 areas that we're going to focus on in practice. I'd write them down. I'd make them known to the team. And this is the hard part. As a coach, can I stay true to coaching those areas and not everything else? Because as soon as I start coaching those areas, And then, oh, hey, but in this, and then this, now they stop focusing on that area too.
Yeah.
And now it becomes back to how do we know if we get it better? And instead, what I learned to do this year is as we're focusing on, hey, these 3 areas for practice, I noticed that, man, this one was a little bit, we weren't very good here. I write that down on my plan.
Nice.
And so that's something to come back to. I carried a clipboard with a pen this year. I never did that. It was kind of just something I followed. Now I'm making notes within that, or it might just be a certain player. Maybe we don't need to work on this with everybody. It's, hey, these 2 guys are struggling with this concept. We need to work with them on this tomorrow.
And it's just a great example of you honoring or valuing their time. Because how often do we say things within our group that's really only about 1 or 2? Let's honor the time of the rest of the group. If they've got it down and they're not struggling with something, let them do something else. Bring in those 1 or 2. So it's just smart teaching, which PGC helped me with that a ton, because I was one of those guys guilty of, all right, we're gonna scrimmage. We're just gonna play a 3-possession game. A 3-possession game would play. All right, guys, here's the 8 things I saw. And there's no continuity from one game to the next, where they would teach a game. Here are our coaching points. And where I would teach it, my basket instructors, those were the only things that they were allowed to talk about. But from that, our players were able to get really good at those things. So I think you're right on the money there.
Yeah. And I think all these kind of things kind of flowed together with things I tried with practice this year and tried with our training sessions. And I thought that, one of the things we looked at that was new, I'd never done it this way this year, is trying to say, all right, this was a concept we worked on Monday. So we're going to come back to it. Sometimes it might be Tuesday. Sometimes it might be a couple days later, but we're going to do this first thing to start practice. Not, I'm going to reteach it and then let's do this. But maybe we worked on something with, all right, our ball screen defense and our rotations out of it. And so to start practice, we're going to do a short 5-minute segment live out of ball screens. Let's go and let's show, do we know did we actually learn? Did learning take place? And, I don't have this memorized, so I'm going to read this, but this is one of those things I think Mark Bennett said, and I think it's just so good, is, because we get caught up as a coach in looking at, we're doing a drill, they did the drill right, so we did a good job teaching it, right? So it must be good. But Mark says this: learning is never evident in the moment. Learning is never evident in the moment. What happens in the moment is performance. Learning becomes evident a week or 2 later when you have to recall to show that you know what to do or how to do it. So that was an example of us, of all of a sudden, let's try to throw this in a couple days later or something, just for a short, it could be 5 minutes and we're going to work through this. And that's where I'm going to base how are we doing in this area, not the day we worked on it a whole bunch and we were all focused on it and talking about it, but during this other segment.
And then you don't touch it again, and a week later in a game, that little moment comes up. Guys, we worked on this.
Yeah.
It's
not my fault. It's not my fault, guys.
We did a week ago.
I taught it.
Yeah. I used to have, speaking of going back to miking yourself up, I don't know if you had just this, you started to zero in on a few of the just isms that you say that you need. And we've all heard coaches, it's as simple as that, or okay, or anything at the end of does that make sense? I was saying that's not it in games a lot, because we would do something offensively that's not what we have talked about. What we have, so I just yell out, "That's not it." And I asked my players one time, "What are some things that I say that you don't like? That's annoying to you?" And they said, "Coach, I can't stand when you say that's not it." I was like, "That's fair. That's fair." And I try to explain. But the whole point, why was I saying that? It was just self-validation. Like, I wanted the parents to know that that's not what I've taught them. It had nothing to do with actually helping them at the time. Anyway.
But isn't it funny? This is what I found, because this year I thought I really made a concerted effort to try to think, if they're not performing something in a certain way, I'd rather start from the perspective of I didn't teach it well. And I thought that when I did that and I said, man, did I not teach this well, guys? Like, not in a, man, did I not teach as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah. Not
but like,
sarcasm,
but,
coach speak,
can I
passive
later
aggressiveness. Yeah.
do I need to teach? How can I teach this better? How can we make, and sometimes what I find is doing it from that perspective, there was a whole lot more responses of, no, coach, it wasn't you. We have to do this.
Yeah.
And again, that's a quiet thing. It's not a loud thing then to make it look like, hey, I already taught this. It's not on me. And it's just a recognition of, hey, we're in this together.
Yeah.
And it's, hey, if it's me, if there's something I can do better, I want to know. Let me help you do it better. And if it's not, and it's something we've got to do that's a performance thing, how can I better set you up still? And you look at some of these guys, you look at Monty Williams, when they lost their series. And I love the thing of, he's asked, how do we lose these games? What needs to be done? Who's at fault? That kind of thing. It's me.
Yeah.
He's just going to own it. And he's not the one out there, screwing things up. We all know that. But man, that's what a good coach does, don't they?
And
that's
Chris Paul even commented on that. He said, because they told Chris Paul that Monty Williams took responsibility. He's like, oh, that's just coach being the amazing person that he is.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like when the players even know that my coach has my back, like he's gonna say that, but they have ownership on it too. One thing I wanted my guys to really have the ability or the freedom to ask questions. But I would always ask, like at the end of teaching something, guys, you have any questions? You guys have any questions?
What a horrible question to ask.
Yeah, because so many of them are sitting there thinking, well, I don't want to be the one that I'm an idiot if I have a question. So the reframing that is, hey guys, what are your questions? What are your questions? Like that changed the way that guys, okay, that sounds like I'm supposed to have them now.
Yeah.
And a freedom came about. And then the response of, if it was something I did say, holding back and not saying, hey, I already told you that, idiot. But that was a huge shift for me in the way that I talked with my guys after teaching something.
And I think a lot of it's just, we don't know that that's how we're coming across. I think it takes an awareness on our part, which I think that's where miking yourself up or evaluating yourself, having other people evaluate you, those kind of things, as difficult as they are, can be really helpful. Because I think we all want to do the right things and we don't recognize sometimes how we would come across. And then once we know, if we're failing to do it, I think it's just lazy. We've got to put time in. For some people, it's more natural than others. Just like some people are more, like, you're a people person. People just like you. You're a nice, fun guy.
Are you actually talking about me? Or are you just saying someone is like
some people might.
Some people are people.
Yeah, some people are people. Some of us, like, that's not my natural bent. Honestly, because like my natural bent, and part of my development as a coach even this year was recognizing who I am and how I'm kind of bent with my personality. It's like, I'm best at working with guys that are driven internally to succeed. And because that's how I am. And I struggle with the guys who are not. Yep. And so I got to recognize that. And it doesn't mean it excuses things, but recognizing kind of that weakness within that. But we look at those, if you're not a people person, then what are you doing to kind of set yourself up to do those things, to connect? One thing I did this year, that I don't know if it's almost like peeking behind the curtain here with the Wizard to say this. And it's almost embarrassing to admit that I have to do this, because I'm that much of I can get right into just focus on wanting to perform mode or teach mode and not connect mode. And man, connection still has to come first. And I mean, like, I know that's a weakness for me, and I'm trying to work on that. I would write down, especially in early season practices, on my practice plan, not one that others would see. I would write down the names of 3 players and one question I would ask each of those players. And so I would make sure I connected either before, or if I couldn't get them before because of classes, I'd connect after and ask them a question that was just something to try to be curious about them and show interest. And I could do that, and I could go through in a given week. I make sure I got through everybody. And like, it sounds probably like, man, what an idiot. You have to write down to remind yourself to talk to people or come up with questions because you're not smart enough to come up with a good question in the flow of the
Just
moment.
put their name down and be a nice person and just ask them a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Like, what kind of person are you that it takes to do that? But
No.
that was an intervention I needed to
Yeah.
do to set myself up to do something that I knew was really important.
Well, TJ Rosine, one of my favorite coaches to learn from, said self-awareness is a superpower. And so like that's something that you definitely have, and you've recognized that, building those relationships are important, and you need to make an effort. Being intentional like that, though, like whatever you even mentioned something earlier, whatever we want to see happen, like it has to have legs. You said something like that, right? Yeah, we these ideas we have, or what we say we want, we actually have to do the work. Building those relationships won't happen by chance or just by hoping that they do. You have to be intentional with it. So I think that's awesome. And you and I are wired a lot alike. And I think that's part of the reason why we got along so well, and not just our love for ice cream Snickers. But I need that. I need that too. I'm very much okay with, here, guys, let's meet. Here's what practice is going to be. Let's get after it. Great job today. See ya. Like, I'm okay with that, but it's got to be more than that.
Yeah. Otherwise, it just appears transactional. And that's not what we're trying to get across. That's not our hearts, but it's what's communicated.
Yep.
And so it doesn't even really ultimately matter. That's just our hearts, because that's what we're communicating. So that's what they're hearing. And we have to be so aware of what's the message we're communicating at any given time.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballology. What's your BSA score? The Ballology Skills Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NAIA, NJCAA, and a growing number of NCAA coaches to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 4-minute, 40-shot test can be taken free today on the Ballology mobile app. Elevate your game. Culture is a buzzword. It's thrown around a ton, but it's basically how you show up. And like Porter Moser said, it's every day. Culture's every day. So how does it drive performance, and what are some of your favorite culture building activities?
Yeah. I mean, everybody talks about culture these days, and I don't know, there's a part of me that almost wants to just find a new word, because it's become such this.
I like standards. I like you saying standards more, like our standards of excellence, standards of not. The words being used a lot.
Yeah. And it's just kind of the idea of who we're going to be. Yep. We did something within that we call our B list. We tried this year. That was more of an individual thing. But I really love this. And, I guess jumping ahead on this one to saying this was something we did that I thought was really good. So we did this thing where a B list, BE, not BE like buzz, it's going to sting you. So our B list. And so we did this on kind of our team retreat, and we got these giant sticky note things, were the giant ones. And so we could put them up on the wall for each guy, and each guy took a marker and was going to write. First, they're going to write, all right, what are 6 words that describe yourself when you're at your best? And so you're thinking about, man, these are me when I'm at my absolute best. Then we said, all right, what's one word that from your own perspective that you would say, if you were going to fill in the blank here, life in general would go better for me if I was more blank, fill that in. So what's that word? So something you just like, I want to be more of, I know this would make things better for me. And then this one fit us, being in a Christian school, especially too, I really like this one. We did one more, was one word, thinking more from God's perspective, that God's just saying like, hey, I want to bless you more than what I'm doing right now. And this isn't about like, let's get what can we get from God? This is about, how
prosperity gospel at John Brown.
This is not that. This is just saying, hey, God's gifted us in certain ways, and how can we use those better to bring him glory? And so if we're going to say from God's perspective, hey, I want to be able to bless you and use you in some other ways more than maybe you've imagined. And I would, if you were more blank. And so it gets you a little bit of some forward thinking. It gets you focusing on, these are who I am at my best. And these are some things maybe that I'm not, that I want to be better at.
Yeah.
And so we did that to, talked about TJ saying, talk about self-awareness and how important that is. And it's just, I think that's everything these days is aware. I think that's a big part of culture is just that awareness. And so we took that and then we took it a step further and gave them about 10 minutes and we said, all right, walk around the room to your teammates' B lists on the wall, add words on the side that these are also things that you see in them too. And man, to learn to
That's
speak that
impactful.
kind of life into other people. We talk about, if you ever read the book, How Full Is Your Bucket was one we did about a decade ago. And we've done a lot of things we call bucket cards that we've done for years with our guys. And this was kind of a way of filling buckets, and, speaking that life into each other. And I mean, I think those are things that build culture.
Yeah.
And being able to recognize the good in other people without being threatened by it. That's the sign of a healthy culture. Because I mean, we're all competitive, and it doesn't mean that you and Matt, you and I could be on the same team, and we're not going to battle every day. And, you're going to just run and drive and jump into me to do your famous layups, and I'm going to then try it against you, and I'm going to get hurt like I did every time I tried to emulate you. Because I don't have that shoulder or your girth and your strength. And
I'll edit that out.
But man, I would put that on your B list because it's just, that's something I'd speak into for you. Maybe not girth
and straight. Thanks, man.
But
let me ask you this. What do you, so that's such an awesome activity and something that I think every team should do. I think my guys should do it. And how do you go from that just being an activity that you do? How do you take that and you kind of allow it to live on or carry on past that? Is there anything else you do with the sheets, the words, anything like that?
What a great question. So we've got a guy that volunteers with us that's a character coach for us. Kind of a newer thing through a group called Nations of Coaches. In place of calling like chaplains. This is something you can get in at any university, whether you're Christian school or not. And so in this guy, Scott Shaw, has been around for the last 4 years, has been more impactful than me, or anything else, I think, in our program, in the guys' lives, because he's just there. And he's here for the guys and loves on them and is a voice and encouragement outside of basketball. That just is there to encourage and be with them. And so what we did through this is he took these B lists that we created and we had them put into kind of a smaller sheet, let's say an 8 by 11 type sheet, laminated it. But we picked out, he kind of picked out one word for each of them that was kind of their big word of this is, of something that represents them, and then came up with a Bible verse for each guy that kind of describes them. And it was laminated, put on each guy's locker.
Wow.
And so it was there all year to go back to and have as a reminder. And so I thought that was really good, just as something to have in front of us. I think that's something that guys will hold on to. And again, you speak life into people and that stays with people. Those are the things you don't know the impact that makes, sometimes ever, but sometimes not until years later. It was kind of like mentioning, one of my players from, I think, year 2 here for me. And we didn't leave on the greatest of terms, when he left. And then a couple of years ago, I get he's playing professional ball and he sends me this picture of a 3x5 card, was one of our bucket cards, and a encouraging thing I'd written to him that he still had. And just trying to say he appreciated it. And I mean, those are things. So you don't know the impact we're making. And sometimes it feels like we're just throwing a whole bunch of things at a wall and hoping things stick. And sometimes that's what we're doing because we care that much and we just want something to stick and we want to make some impact.
Yeah. But to go back to even habits or rhythms, or workouts, like you said at the beginning, it doesn't matter that you're just throwing a bunch out there and some stick, but you'll find out the ones that you really want to do. But how many guys just aren't even throwing stuff on the wall? Like, I'd rather be throwing a lot on the wall and seeing what sticks always than not doing it, because I think the risk of not doing these activities, building culture, speaking in your lives, is, man, you're missing out on opportunities.
Yeah, I agree.
I want you to talk a little bit about, because part of culture is the traditions that your program has. like to me at Faith, since these kids for the most part, almost like a college, they did not go to, they don't live by each other.
Yeah.
Most of them came in either junior high or high school, so they don't have these deep bonds that go way back to when they were little. So we have to create traditions and things that are important from year to year. Talk a little bit about one of the coolest traditions that I've seen, which is the toilet paper game.
Love it, man. You almost need a link in this to on our website.
I will put it in the show notes. I will.
It's awesome. I mean, talk about one of the coolest traditions in college basketball. So for over 35 years, we've had this tradition. There's some other schools that now do it. And
but they're copying you.
I don't hate on it because it's an awesome tradition, man. Like, go experience it. If you can do it, they're not going to do it like JBU. I'll tell you that. I mean, it's one of those things where, so the first game of every season at home, our community, our campus, everybody's out. We pack out the gym. Sometimes you got people dressing up. A lot of times it's around Halloween. So now and then you get people dressing up more, or you get someone in a giant like paper mache toilet paper roll. We've been sponsored before, by like Charmin or Scott's, all these things.
That's the
like that around
that you
here.
want right there for your program.
Yeah. we had ESPN's been in here and done stuff. They came in my first or second year, put cameras all over the place to do it. It's been on, if you follow some of the stuff on our website and look at some of the things they put together. I mean, we've been on USA Today.
Well, I feel like it's on Sports Center every year. Every year that you do it, it shows up. Yeah.
They call it the greatest technical in college basketball. And so, you look at that, it's up there with some of the great traditions, like Silent Night is another huge one that Taylor University does. That's so cool. So our first made basket of the year, then everyone throws the roll of toilet paper and it's just hysteria. And the kids come running out onto the floor and they're diving around. It's 2 or 3 minutes at least of that before everything starts to get cleaned up. I mean, it's such a cool thing. And I'm now my first year here at JBU. I think it took us 5 or 6 game minutes before we scored a bucket. And so everyone's just like, ready to throw it. And we can't score. And I'm like, when is this going to happen? We just need to get it done. But it is such a cool thing. And I'll tell you this, because we're speaking about culture and tradition anyways, this just speaks so highly of our guys within our program and the love that they have for each other. And I think this especially grows out of, as I mentioned, it's 7 guys within the group that had been there for 4, 5, or 6 years. You get to the TP game and it's like you're right of as a starter, man, I've earned this. This is a pretty special event that I get to go in there and be a starter for, and this huge crowd and be on the floor and all this. So separately, these guys did not even talk about this. We had 2 guys that were both returning All-Americans, one a 5th-year guy, one a 4th-year guy this year, came to me the day before the toilet paper game and said, "Coach, I want one of my teammates who's also like a senior who doesn't normally start. I want him to start in my place for this game." 2 guys, 2 of our All-Americans did this. I mean, those are like the Rudy moments of the guy setting my jersey on the desk of the coach and saying, I want him to have my spot. I mean, how awesome is that? And so instead you just get a chance to see these guys get to go experience that. That's cool. I think that just speaks highly to our guys. I mean, just speaks so highly of the love that they have developed for each other over our time here. And hopefully that's somewhat as a result of some of the things we're trying to put into place to help grow that. But man, as a coach, that's just exciting to see.
If they did a movie on the TP game, who would in that moment, who would play you?
Oh goodness, who would play me?
I don't know why don't take this the wrong way. Tom Cruise just popped in my head.
Tom Cruise has some nice hair.
Well, but I mean, they can shave it, Mine's moving back farther and farther. That's really good.
You know who people used to say I looked like back in the day was Kevin Bacon. I didn't know if to take that as a good way or a bad way, but some people used to say Kevin Bacon, which always made me that he's like, get off my cape, that old story of his, where he's about to go to blows with him. But so I don't know if it's Kevin Bacon or who, someone bald and beautiful.
That's right. You were one of the best shooters. I still remember the first time I saw you was, I think we weren't even at the Student Life Center. We were back in it's to the left of the Student Life Center in those back gyms. And I'm, going through my routine. We're about to play pickup. And then I see this, like skinny guy running, going full speed, shooting threes from wing to wing on his own, not missing very much. And I thought, what the crap? Like, I mean, they're bringing a guy that does this better than me. Like, I didn't know who you were, and then found out that you were going to be, helping and coaching and stuff. But you're one of the best shooters I've ever been around. So with your program, how do you teach shooting confidence with your players?
Well, back to that, I was just trying to stay in shape for intramurals. Baylor had some great intramurals, man, and I'm just living the dream now that everything was over for me playing. I was just ready for intramurals, dude.
Right.
But I loved it still. I love to work. I love to work hard. Love that part of the game. I think that's such a difficult question, is when you talk about confidence in players. And I've talked with a number of coaches about that just this year, I think more than ever, in trying to figure out what's the best approach to it. Because I think it's a little bit of a chicken or the egg, which comes first kind of question, is does the confidence of the coach come first? Of, man, Matt, I believe in you. Go out there, do this. I believe in you to do this and this and this. Or does the confidence come first from the player showing I have the ability to do this and to get it done, which gives then the coach the confidence? And I don't know if there's an exact right answer to that, because I think it can be 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And I think it depends on perspective, and probably depends on where you're at any given time, depends on the relationship. But
I'll give you the answer. Do you?
Give it, man.
I believe there is, and you're right on the money. It's a trick question, and I don't do it to. Obviously, not trying to fool people, but it 100% comes from player first, because no coach can give a player confidence in a skill that player knows deep down he does not have, has not put in the time for, hasn't earned the right to be confident in that.
Yeah.
Now, what coaches can do is not steal confidence, because I don't even like that. Players can give their confidence away, but I don't even think, if a player is truly confident because they put in the time and they're thinking the right thoughts all throughout the day of what they're doing, negative comments from a coach should bounce off them. But I think what coaches can do is lessen or make players second guess their confidence a little bit on really, can I do this, or really more take away creativity with shooting. But that's my answer.
And I think within that, a couple things come to mind. Is one, I shouldn't be saying negative things to my shooters, or probably my players in general. And it's not about like I have to coddle players, but what good does that do?
Right.
I think a better approach is often just, asking questions. How can I ask more questions? And I think it comes back to, again, awareness. And I think that's one of the things that, as I've studied and done a deep dive with Alan and Simon this year into who I am as a coach and what I value, I think what part of it is helping players learn to assess who they are. And that's anybody that does that is, it's a difficult, painful, humiliating at times type process. It's hard to swallow that stuff for any of us as a coach or as a player. I really believe that when players say, I'm really confused about what you want, and I don't know, I'm confused out there, I don't know what shots to shoot and what not to shoot. I could be wrong on this. I fully admit that. And maybe a week from now, I will change my tune, because someone will speak life into me or rip me apart on this. I don't believe that's, I think if you were to ask questions of that player instead of just speak into it, if you ask questions, I find that I can't imagine one conversation where I've really tried to dig in instead of just saying, no, you do this. If I'm digging into these players to ask questions and peel it back, they already know what's a good shot or what I say is a good shot. They just don't want to accept it.
Mm.
And I think that often becomes more of a thing. It could be a player that believes, man, I am really good at a 30-foot 3-point shot, and it's like, no, man, you're not. And it's like, man, you just don't give me confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it's, I had a player several years ago and he was shooting a lot of threes off of a ball screen. And I said, I just don't think that's a good shot for us. It's not a good, investment of our shot because you're not making a high percentage. And using synergy, we could go back through that. And we looked at him and we saw, okay, you're 3 of 27 on that shot. So, okay, it's not a good shot. Now, at the same time, it can go the other way. I had this really special shooter this year who, man, he's got some crazy game and he's like a Steph Curry where he can pull all over and some crazy shots. And I'm like, what are you doing sometimes? And we're talking late in the season, and I just think, we talk about, and I love this. I got this from another coach: A shots, B shots, and F shots. And we try to talk about A shots are great shots, B shots are okay shots. Everything else is an F. There's not some in between. And so we would talk about, hey, we don't want early B shots in possessions. We're all about early A shots, but don't take early B shots. And I said, I think part of the reason your percentage isn't up there is we're taking too many early B shots. And he's just like, he's nice about this. He's just like, coach, he's like, I think I'm shooting really well on those. And so we go to synergy. All right, let's watch the last 5 games of this. And dang, if the kid wasn't right, the dude's shooting like 45% on early B shots, like crazy shots. And he's shooting terrible from wide open shots later in the possession. We're like, all right, I guess you just need to wait for someone to get on.
Yeah, he wants that extra degree of difficulty.
Yeah, it can go the other way. But I think it all comes back to, can I assess and teach them to assess and teach, gosh, the more that they arrive at conclusions, the more they're going to own it. If I'm telling them everything, they're not going to own a lot of that. We tried it this year. I've never done this. And we, trying to work on some shot selection for honestly just a player or two. So we did this with the whole group. Is I'd have like 2 players, you and I would get together and I'd say, we're going to watch the last 3 games of shots that each other shot. And you're going to evaluate mine. I'm going to evaluate yours. A, B, or F. Yeah. And I think you do that, and then they're going to talk to me about it real quick. And it just, anything we can do to create awareness and learning to assess ourselves, help us see ourselves better. And without that, how are you going to create change? If you can't assess yourself, awareness is often enough to motivate change. You've got to have some type of awareness, and that process starts with being able to see reality clearly.
Yeah, 2 things there. The one, like you mentioned, if a player says he's confused or he doesn't know the shots to take, you better make sure alarms better go off. Am I clearly communicating what our shot selection standards are for our team? Because I think that maybe in high school or definitely a select ball, whatever, I just think that that's an area where we forget quite a bit. We'll just use vague terminology. Guys, only good shots right now. You got 5 different dudes thinking that they're good shots, something else. Hey, fellas, no more bad shots. Well, he's not talking to me. He's obviously talking to him. Yeah. So you got to eliminate those. But then, so once you figure out, I do a decent job of teaching that, then you ask him and you peel the layers, like you said, and you're right on the money. It comes down to he does think it's good, which then I feel like we can take the responsibility back on us to either through synergy, or what I like to do is through training, show them. And so like if a player comes up and says, coach, or a parent comes up and says, and I'm in my driveway, I always make this, I've rebounded for him when it's sunny, there's no wind, there's no pressure, and everything's great, he knocks this down. I don't care about that. In our shooting games that we play all the time, and it could be any game, but typically where the ones where they are shots like the ones we'll get in games, from the spots we'll get in games, from our shooting games, with all of the tracking we do and all of the times that we yell out our scores, that we say, keep your hand up if you make this or that, we're writing their numbers down over 2 to 3 months. You will know. You can't tell me that's a good shot when we can go back to data, months and months of it, or synergy like you're talking about. And then they're still reluctant at the very end. Well, I never want to use the bench as a weapon, but ultimately, if shot selection is the reason why games are won and lost, any 8-point loss is one bad shot a quarter.
Yeah.
So I have to make sure that we're putting the right guys on the floor that will value the most important part of the game.
Yeah. No, I agree. And we don't do a lot to quantify everything and record all that. It's just manpower wise, that just takes a lot sometimes to do all that stuff. And I have the ability to recruit the guys we want. So there's not a lot of guys I recruit that's not able to knock down a three. And so I want guys that are then able to play with that confidence. And then it's just more about which shots of those are you free to take versus others, and you have the ultimate green light, or, what's a good shot for you. I have that luxury as a college coach of recruiting that.
Yeah.
And so then I think, we're just getting guys who can shoot the ball. And I love the idea of being able to record all that, because I do think,
Well, and when I say
time,
record, when I say record too, it's as easy as, so we do a Ray Allen shooting game where you've got you've got your 5 ladders on the floor, and on each ladder there are 6 levels. You make level 1, you go to level 2, all the way back. Anytime you miss, you come back to the beginning. And so the goal is to make 6 in a row, you get a point. Well, after our 2-minute game, we switch partners. 2 minute. All right, everybody run in. Raise your hand if you made 1 or more ladders. I mean, that's recording.
Yeah,
like that to me. And so I can do that one on with 30 players.
Yeah.
So I am not by any means jotting everything down. We have our major game, green, yellow, red shooting, that we will write. And that's such an important time for role identification. If a player is somewhat open, but in a free flowing system, another player is very open, and that guy makes a higher number than me consistently, I've heard his number again and again. It just helps me reinforce that.
No, I'm with you. And then, but every now and then you get an outlier too in that. And we had one that just finished, and he was a multiple time All-American. And he knows it. I hate watching him shoot in practice. If he's at this basket, I'm turning my back to it. And he works hard. It has nothing to do with how he works. But he just doesn't shoot well in practice. But man, he hits shots in games.
Gamers are real. And I think that's the beauty of it is you build the system and structure where they're hopefully building their own confidence, but then they also know that in a game, if I demonstrate that I can, what we would call a 6, a contested jump shot, if I can hit some 6s, coach isn't going to be mad at me when I knock down a 6, but there will constantly be reminders. Hey, can we be more patient for 7s? Can we take our time a little bit? But I think you're right on the money.
Yeah, good. And then, whether it's related to that, you can tell me if you want to get into this, but along with the shooting, I think I could talk into, if you want, a couple of things we do to try to develop our shooters, or develop
let's do that, please.
That ability. So we, again, kind of throwing a lot of things at the wall and seeing what sticks kind of method. I think over the last couple of years, a couple of things that I've liked. One, our players liked a whole lot more than the other, but I'll tell you 2 of them. One is just we're going to record some shooting on a board in the locker. And we just took, so a big dry erase board, took some tape, divided into it like a grid. And we kind of have each player's name along one side, have the date that we can write in up at the top, and have like a 2-week stretch, say, of it on there. We did one at one point. There was a month-long one you could see at a time. And we had a certain small shooting thing that they needed to do. I mean, I'm talking small, where it might be something that takes 10 or 15 minutes, and that's it. That's all we're asking of you. But I feel like it's almost like if you can find that tipping point for each person, what's that thing that, I mean, if you get in the gym and you shoot for 15 minutes, you do like your workout, you're pretty likely to stay longer. You're not likely to think, I did my 15, I'm done, I'm out of here.
That's true. Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it's what is that tipping point? For somebody, is it, man, every day I'm going to go in the locker room and put my shoes on. I mean, because if you go in the locker room and you put your shoes on and get laced up, maybe you got, you're older now. If Matt goes in there and puts on his headband, his rec specs, and his knee braces and everything else, you go in there, with your Kurt Rambis outfit, and you're like, if I can do that, I'm going to go ahead and shoot. I'm not going to go through all that work and take it all back off to go back to bed. So you got to find out what's the tipping point for people. So what we did is we tried to come up with a very easy shooting thing standard that they needed to get done. And then I borrowed this. I can't remember where I got it from, but someone talked about the Seinfeld streak. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. So Jerry Seinfeld back in the day as a comedian, I had heard talked about, hey, the key to being a great comedian, you got to constantly write more material and you got to always be doing it. And it's a hard discipline to do. And so one of the things he would do to help that is, like, say you take a calendar, you print off a calendar, and I'm gonna write material for 15 minutes a day. And after you do day one, you cross it with an X, a big red X. You do the next day, big red X. And so what you're doing is over the course of time, you start building a streak. And there's power in a streak because all of a sudden now you start building a big enough streak where you haven't missed a day. Now it becomes not just, it's hard to get in there. Do I want to get in there? Now it's, I don't want to break the streak. And it's, how long can I keep this streak going? And so when we did this, we had a couple of my guys that I don't know how much they ever got in the gym. And they were good players for us. That just wasn't part of who they were on their own. They both did it for over a month without taking a day off. I had another player, I think, did it for the entire summer. And, you start becoming a bit neurotic probably with some of these things. And it's, hey, I'm going to be going out tonight. I want to go hang out with some friends. I'm going to make sure I get this in then first because I don't want to blow my streak. I'm leaving at 7 a.m. for a trip. I'm going to get up at 5 so I can go get this streak in, so I can keep that going. And so we talk about going streaking. And, we just kind of reframed what we mean by going.
You got to have that Will Ferrell clip right above it.
We're going streaking. And so I think there's a lot of power to that. And I love that. And that resonates with me a lot. This year we changed it. Instead of that, we just tried hey, this is a challenge of this many shots made over a course of a 6-week stretch, this many each week. So can you average at least this many each week and get this many done by the end of it? So now you can choose, maybe I want to take certain days off, or I want to work really hard getting the extra shots for these 3 or 4 days and not the other days. And it gave, there's a part of me that cringes. I'm like, no, you should be in there every day. Like, who doesn't want to be in there?
Don't give them the out.
Yeah. But, I ask all of my players, and it's funny, every single one of them would choose that method over the other. And part of it I realize is most people aren't wired like me, with that. And that's not a right or wrong thing. It's probably some wrong in that with me, because I could be neurotic with that of, hey, I don't want to break a streak. And, I did that as a player, just a below average kind of college player trying to play back in the day. And I think my streak was 5 years. Wow. And I was neurotic about that kind of stuff. And so I think everybody else should do it. I think I don't want to let them off the hook and never do a streak, because I think that's a really good thing, is can you make that kind of discipline for a certain stretch? But I think there's still just something, can we get them to do something? Yeah. And something's better than nothing. And all of a sudden, some of these guys might just, hey, I'm going to average this many a day. But some guys, it's, hey, I want to take the weekends off. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just because every player is going to be different. And every player's got to make the decision of, this is what I'm willing to do, recognizing, what it takes. And, I heard a great quote that kind of goes along with that. I think Kipling said something like, if you don't get what you want, it's a sign that either you didn't take it seriously enough, or that you tried to bargain over the price. And that's what it takes. I think most of us just try to bargain. I want to be great. I'm not good first. I don't, again, going back to, do I want to be good first? But this is what it takes. Well, how about just this? Will this get me there? Will this get me to great? And we try to bargain. Yeah.
Yeah. You had a really good point about how the way that you used to play, you trained. I mean, not many players become coaches. It's a small amount of the actual people that really played the game and then become coaches themselves. But I would imagine most of those players that become coaches, they probably weren't lazy players, most of them. Yeah. And we had an athletic director here at Faith that had a great reminder to me. He's like, Matt, we're the weird ones. Like, we are the weird ones. It's not that there's anything wrong with them, the players, it's us. And you just kind of, the way that you are wired, the way I was, and the way that a lot of players that become coaches are like, this is our job. We're taking it mentally or the priority to another level that most players just won't ever get to. And either they'll become great or they'll just finish being good. And it's all based on, those choices that they make.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the longer I've coached, I mean, I try to recruit guys that are going to work hard. Although every coach, every high school coach tells me their kid's a gym rat and everybody's a gym rat the
So
first
not
week.
true.
Everybody's a gym rat though the first week of school, and then almost nobody's a gym rat.
Yeah.
And like that's what we hear as a college coach from a lot of people. But things change, priorities change in college, and you get these different freedoms. And I think this is a hard thing to do as a coach. But if I'm going to do this on a long-term basis, in any way, I think there's things that I've got to accept that kids are different, and it's trying to find out. It goes back to the relationship with the guys. Can you get to know them? Can you help understand what they want?
Yeah.
Can you help try to figure out what motivates them? And it can't be me. I'm not going to be in this so long that like I'm going to be the prime motivator, because that just it takes a lot of energy to do what we do as coaches. And I don't lament over that. I don't complain over that, but I want to give most of my energy to my family.
Yeah.
And I can't just pour myself out and be out from that. I need guys who are motivated to do stuff. And I think what is more helpful as a coach, and I read a great book from Dr. Stephen Rolnick. He talks about motivational interviewing in athletics. What was the name of it? He called it coaching athletes to be their best. And he talks about motivational interviewing as a phrase I think he coined. But it's the idea that as a coach, you're a guide, and that's a hard thing, because I don't think that's how, I mean, most of the things we do in coaching, it's just, hey, what did we learn from? What did other coaches are doing, or what did we see the coaches that we worked under or played for, or we saw in a video, versus are we asking, what's the best way, for guys, for our kids? And it's how can I coach these athletes to be their best? And so by doing that, it's a long play to do it this way, not a short-term thing, but can I guide them and help them arrive at the things that we need to arrive at? And can I show that just wild curiosity about them? And those are hard things to do. And it's hard to remember when it's so much easier just to give and just tell what to do,
But you know what,
but it's so much better.
That guide idea, what that does though, that's really freeing to me, because I would enjoy being their guide. I don't enjoy feeling like I'm leading them and me, or pushing them, pleading with them. And because then too, if it's really me that's responsible for them being the success they say they want, if they don't, then I've screwed up. I've let them down. And those failures, even just 9 years of being a head coach, 15 years overall, like those failures are the things that unfortunately are really hard to get past. But I think if it was more of, and even just like you said early on about being vulnerable of, hey guys, I'm going to screw up. Also take the stance of, listen guys, like I'm a co-contributor. Like I'm a guide with you. I'm step by step with you for what you want.
Yeah.
And I'll give you some advice sometimes, and I'll hold you accountable sometimes with, what I think you could be doing more based on what you said you want. But this isn't going to be a deal where I'm going to pull you across. And I think that's, you've said a lot of impactful things. I think that'll help a lot.
Well, and it kind of gives me the picture, Matt, of thinking about if I'm, I don't want to be just straight motivator. And it's not a wrong thing. I know there are coaches that do that, and that's who they are. And I'm not putting that down. But like, I think of a picture of a straight motivator as I'm standing behind you, just leaning in, straight pushing you the whole time.
With
like going up a hill. Yeah. And I mean, and we talk about, this is not easy, because we talk about this line going from ordinary to extraordinary. And it's not a straight continuum. It's more of a mountain. And so you're leaning into it, trying to push up. And so I'm either pushing behind like that, motivating. I'm in front of them trying to pull, and I'm constantly looking over my shoulder to see, are they following? Are they coming with? Or I'm a guide, I'm alongside of them, and I'm saying, let's get there together. And it's just, there are times I think we need to move into some of those different roles within that too, as we try to guide. But I just like that picture so much better of we're going to do this together.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
So I do know you, and I think I feel like I know some of your food preferences and things that you like. But it has been, I mean, golly, almost 20 years. Which you've aged really well, by the way.
Gracefully.
You look great. Speed round, quick questions. First thing that pops in your head. You ready?
Let's go.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Grater's ice cream. It's from Ohio. Chocolate chip. Unbelievable.
Wow. Graters.
Life-changing.
Okay.
Graters.
So if I'm ever in Ohio, I need to find that.
Sometimes you can buy it at specialty stores around the country.
Is that like a Bluebell type? Like it's just a like.
Don't even put it in the category of Bluebell. This is not Bluebell. This is artisan good ice cream. Not like the flowery ice creams that like my wife likes to drink, like these weird kind of place. Like this is ice cream.
Do you realize what you've just done? I don't know how many listeners that are people that actually listen to this. It might just be me and you. We have this talk and we had a great time doing it, but I've learned a ton. But you did just about 75% of the Texans just clicked off when you talk poorly about Bluebell.
That's not talking poorly. That's saying one thing is better than the other. That's being pragmatic about things. And I'm trying to open someone's eyes. We're talking about being able to be real and properly assess things. If you can't properly assess Grater's ice cream versus Bluebell, all right, click off.
For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
Shot clock.
Texting or talking?
Talking.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas. Just a nice, well-needed break on top of everything else, on top of the importance of it.
I had a coach say 4th of July because he doesn't feel like he knows what Thanksgiving and Christmas really is. Because it's always in season. That was an interesting take on it.
I just think no matter what the season's like, I can go away from Christmas and unplug. I can recalibrate. I'm focused on my family. I'm focused on the birth of Jesus. You know, it's a great recalibration, rejuvenation time for me. Although I get sick, I think every Christmas, every time there's a break, it's like my body shuts down, goes sick, which is every time I'm scheduled to do one of these with you, I think too. I think 3 times we've been scheduled and 3 times I've been sick.
Yeah, which I just took it as you just really didn't want to talk with me. And invisibility or super strength?
Super strength.
If you could travel back in time, what period would you go to? And you're just observing, you're not actually living in it.
I think the time of like way back with like David in the Bible. Like I just love that time and loving hearing the stories. I want to follow him and his mighty men around and like see all these stories and like see a dude go into a pit with a lion. I want to see a dude take down a couple big Egyptians, whatever, like all these cool things.
Yeah.
Like, I think that'd be pretty awesome. And yet these tender heart, like just to be someone that's ultimately a man that God trusted is who David was. Man, what a powerful thing to say.
Your favorite place to travel?
I love the mountains, man.
Really?
We don't get there much because I got little kids and the beach is a lot easier. But man, there's just something about the mountains. I feel like I'd be carrying my whole family on my back if we did that right now. I feel alive in the mountains.
Favorite childhood TV show?
MacGyver. I used to watch that with like me and my dad, man, we loved some MacGyver back in the day.
You're the first one to mention that, but you're so right. Like, what an awesome show. And then, of course, MacGruber later.
Hey, it was the first that popped into my head. I don't think I would have thought of that normally.
That's really good.
MacGyver, I love it.
That's really good. 2 more. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
Cups. That's really hard to how you measure cups by. I measure it by mugs.
Is this one or is this 2?
Yeah, I mean, I drink coffee and water. I love coffee and I could drink it all day long. I can drink it before I go to bed.
How do you drink it?
Black. You know, I started out
like a man.
In the Baylor days, I had to put a lot of cream in there. I was learning from Coach Driscoll just to get it down. When he'd take it and just chug it before practice out of the pot, and I'm learning from that. And now I'm just straight black.
You become a man.
Hair on my chest.
That's right. Yeah. Last one, probably the most important that we've had all day. Godfather, Star Wars, or neither?
Star Wars, man. I grew up loving Star Wars. I had those things memorized.
Let's go.
And you still can't beat those original 3 to me back in the day.
Yeah, but I mean, you know what I'm going through right now, which I've never done, is Clone Wars, the kind of computer whatever.
Good.
Yeah, it's good because here's what I realized is some of these spin-offs like Boba Fett and they're introducing characters from a canon that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of going through and learning a little bit. But anyway, yeah.
I'm excited. My kids aren't quite old enough to watch those yet.
Oh.
And I just can't wait for that age. I just hope that they don't go into it and just shatter my heart and be like, this is so dumb, Dad.
Well, get them started with the Lego Star Wars because
There you
that's
go.
a great way to introduce it. They're funny. They're really like I used to between that or like, I don't know, Teletubbies, I would always push Kate towards Lego Star Wars. So
Nice.
it's been worth the wait, my friend, because this was such a pleasure. I mean, you're a really special person to me. And I love though, getting to learn more about your mind and how you teach and the things that you're into. Like, I just got a ton out of this, man.
Man, I appreciate it. It's been so much fun just being able to chop it up with you and catch up. And I feel like we do have the kind of relationship here. We can kind of just pick up where we leave off, however long it may be. Had a strong enough foundation from those couple of years at Baylor.
Yeah, I do believe that. And thank you so much for sharing and for your time today. I mean, you gave us almost 2 hours. That's incredible.
Holy cow. Holy cow.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.